Whatever the message on the war from Donald Trump, Iran's sending its own today, that it's taking the threat of a US ground operation seriously and will resist it. It follows the Iranian president's message directed to the American people. Long on words, short on concrete details on how this war might end. As it turned out, the US president had something similar in mind in his 20-minute primetime address overnight.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing.
If they didn't result in a deal, he said, US strikes would extend to electrical plants, even oil infrastructure, destroying Iran's economy. If that is the basis of his Stone Age language, it would hit all Iranians, including the protesters he'd promised to help in January. His only reference to them last night came to emphasize what he called the murderousness of a regime that killed, he said, 45,000 of its own people. As for the Strait of Hormuz, those countries who, unlike the US, needed it for energy, he said, should grab it and cherish it.
In any event, when this conflict is over, the strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will resume the flowing, and the gas prices will rapidly come back down. Stock prices will rapidly go back up.
But even as he spoke, the oil price went rapidly up, stocks in Asia rapidly down. And for all the fixed smiles on Wall Street, the Dow Jones reversing some of its pre-speech gains. So what of those countries who might cherish, but are far from willing to grab the strait? One option's been to deal with Iran, some ships reportedly changing their flags, paying tolls of up to $2 million. The Philippines today saying it had negotiated safe passage for its ships, seafarers and energy supplies. That might account for some of a surge in vessels today through the shipping lane. Bahrain saying it hoped for a UN resolution on the strait tomorrow. Iran that it was drafting a monitoring protocol with Oman. As for a military option, Emmanuel Macron on a state visit to South Korea, ruling it out.
There
are people who argue for forcibly clearing the Strait of Hormuz through a military operation, a stance that has at times been expressed by the United States of America. I say at times because it has shifted. That has never been the option we have chosen, and we consider it unrealistic.
The current Trump option made clear when he posted images of Iran's, the Middle East's, tallest bridge demolished from the sky. Much more to follow. There might be nothing left of Iran unless it signed a deal, threatened the man who not long ago was promising help was on its way. Help for people like Amir Hussein Hatami, a teenager detained during the January protests, convicted of being an enemy agent, this morning executed. Almost immediately, a music video featuring a young man who looked like him went viral among the Iranian diaspora. The words, "Our tears mean nothing, our laughter means nothing, our losses and victories, nothing at all." Well, Iran promising today a crushing response to the military and rhetorical pressure. And as Israelis came out of the first day of Passover around sunset, there was the first of several waves of attacks, not just from Iran, from the Houthis in Yemen, and also from Hezbollah. One ballistic missile getting through in Petah Tikva on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. No injuries there despite that impact, none also on the coastal city of Nahariya, where a kindergarten was among the buildings damaged. Only one injury reported across Israel tonight. Further north, the fighting goes on with Hezbollah inside Lebanon. Israel saying 40 Hezbollah operatives killed in the last 24 hours. But if you're looking for somewhere where the narrative of this war may have shifted, perhaps it is the Strait of Hormuz today, where we've seen this uptick in traffic, these bilateral deals struck, talk of a multilateral arrangement, potentially at the UN on Friday. All of it excluding, of course, Donald Trump, the man who says he is the person with whom Iran must make a deal.
Now, the French President Emmanuel Macron launched a thinly veiled attack on his US counterpart earlier, saying, if you want to be serious, don't go around saying the opposite of what you said the day before. But is there a strategy behind Donald Trump's mixed messages? Here's Kira Moodley report on that from Washington, D.C.
The blood moon is seriously the biggest twist in survivor history.
CBS cut off an episode of Survivor so that the American people could hear from their leader. Reality TV interrupted by the reality TV president.
Tonight, every American can look forward to a day when we are finally free from the wickedness of Iranian aggression and the specter of nuclear blackmail. Because of the actions we have taken, we are on the cusp of ending Iran's sinister threat to America.
Was this the beginning of the end, or a hint of escalation to come? The price of oil went up this morning, with no one seemingly reassured, because this was meant to be Trump claiming back the narrative on the war with Iran. Ever since he announced this conflict, while the US military has been on the offensive, the White House has been on a model defensive back home, constantly trying to explain why they started this war and what the precise goals have been.
For me, what really stood out is that he is finally addressing the American people about what the goals are, but we really didn't get entirely a sense of that. We started this war with this goal of regime change, and instead what the United States and Israel have created with this war is a rump regime that's more hardline, more repressive.
This has been foreign policy at the whim of one man. Ever since he came back to power, Trump has ruled not via a cabinet of experts, but fawning loyalists. And he has bypassed Congress entirely as he uses his Sharpie to sign executive order after executive order.
You know, it's really frustrating me as an Iran analyst here in Washington. I've seen so many smart people be fired from their job in the State Department and other U.S. agencies, and the president is going off his own ideas on how the world works.
I mean, this is no way to govern a republic. We have 3 branches of government. It seems, according to this president, we only have one, and I'm hopeful that Congress will wake up at some point and start reclaiming some of their authority here.
$6 per gallon.
Trump's way of governing means the buck stops with him, but with gas prices averaging $4 and his approval ratings on the economy falling, he knows he needs to be out sooner rather than later. He said that price rises were short-term and that the Strait of Hormuz was not America's issue to deal with.
They can have one terrorist there with a machine gun someplace, and they'll say, oh, it's not totally clean, So let them do it. Let France do it. They get a lot of oil from the Strait. Let the European countries do it.
As the UK hosts talks about reopening the Strait, many will be questioning America's place in the world, once the defender of peace and free trade, now seemingly uninterested in any of that.
Would your argument be to the Trump administration that they've weakened America?
Oh, absolutely. America, over the past 80 years, has built a better world, a more free world, a more prosperous world through allies. And we've done this through our friendships. And what has happened over the past year is we've made our allies our enemies.
Good evening.
Primetime addresses from the White House are rare, but they can define one's time in office. From declaring a nuclear threat in Cuba,
a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere,
to a resignation,
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow,
to responding to an act of terror.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
What will Trump's address be remembered for? A needless speech about a needless war? He wants it to be about him marking himself out as a president who, unlike all the others, dealt with the threat of Iran and did not get stuck in a forever war.
Iraq went on for 8 years, 8 months, and 28 days. We are in this military operation, so powerful, so brilliant, against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days.
This president cares about his legacy. Hence the constant talk this week about his White House ballroom.
I think it'll be the greatest ballroom.
And the way he's put his name on the Kennedy Center. Donald Trump wants to be remembered, but he cannot gold wash the history books, and they may not be as gleaming as the memorials he makes for himself.
Well, earlier I spoke to Ambassador John Bolton, a well-known hawk on Iran. He's a former US ambassador to the UN who was National Security Advisor during President Trump's first term, but later fell out with him. I asked him if this war is proving that regime change is still possible or not.
Well, I think we may actually be getting closer to regime change. There are a number of indications that the regime is fragmenting at the top. It's certainly still in power, but it's had 47 years to entrench itself. We're talking about one month worth of activity. We have precipitated a premature succession crisis by killing the supreme leader, and his successor may or may not be alive or conscious. I think regime change is within reach here. The problem is, by not having explained what the purpose of the military attacks were to the American people, to Congress or allies or the opposition, Trump has forfeited many opportunities to build for success. in getting regime change or whatever his objective actually turned out to be.
When you look at the economic damage across the world, you look at the death and destruction being wrought in the Middle East, it's not surprising, is it, that a lot of people are saying this is Trump's Suez moment?
The fact is, the bulk of the damage inside Iran is the destruction of military and military-industrial complex type activities. And certainly there's been attacks on Israel and the Gulf Arab states, as well as U.S. forces in the region, but the overwhelming ratio of force has been applied against Iran. And I think the effects are going to be hard for them to recover. What has not been done well, though, is allowing Iran to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz, which was entirely predictable. I think now that's one reason why Trump really has to finish the job.
And that means ground troops going in if you're going to finish the job, as you put it.
No, I don't think so. Again, I think it's the Iranian people who are overwhelmingly opposed to this regime.
They'd get slaughtered, though.
Well, there's a lot of work to do, which is why we should have cooperated with them in advance of the attack to find out how we could be helpful.
The regime is clearly doing a very good job of messing up the world's oil supply through the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump claims that he doesn't care if the Strait of Hormuz is still closed at the end of the war. Do you believe that?
He may, but it's a delusional position to hold. We may not buy very much oil from the Gulf. Europe may not buy very much oil, but the market for oil is a global market. And when one major source is cut off, prices will rise. If the Iranians tried to keep the price at $100 a barrel, even after the war was over, and could successfully close the strait if they chose to do that, then this would be like the 1970s. We'd be at the mercy of OPEC again. It would be, I think, a catastrophic strategic mistake for the United States for Trump to declare victory and walk away with the strait still closed.
European economies, the British economy, everybody's hurting from this war, which was a war of choice. How serious do you think the rift is between Europe and the US?
Well, I think it's serious. Look, all wars are wars of choice. This is Europe's war. I mean, Trump made a serious mistake in not consulting the allies, and not just NATO, but the Gulf allies, our Pacific allies who buy so much of their oil from the Gulf. Serious mistake in not consulting in advance. But this is Europe's war. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Number one, the Iranians, through their proxies and through their own efforts, have committed multiple terrorist attacks in and around Europe, as they have in North America. And with all due respect, Europe is closer to Iran than we are. And that has real meaning because Iran's missiles can range Europe and they cannot range the United States.
But Europe chose not to poke the hornet's nest. I mean, after all, Europe is trying to help Ukraine defend itself at the moment. There's a lot on Europe's plate. They don't want to be involved in this war.
Well, that's a problem, I have to say. I'm a strong supporter of the NATO alliance, but the idea that little Europe just sits there in its bubble and doesn't have to trouble itself, except when Russia invades a country right on its borders, then suddenly they wake up to say, the world's a little bit dangerous out there, isn't it? The war in Iran is being waged by a proxy of the Sino-Russian axis. That's the biggest threat all of us face in the 21st century. The threat to Taiwan, the threat posed by Iran, to me, is essentially equivalent to the threat posed by Russia in Ukraine. And if Europe doesn't understand that, Europe's in for a rough ride.